Well, hello there, boys and girls and parishioners, and welcome to our virtual St. Nicholas celebration. Normally, we would be gathering in Unity Hall for some hot dogs and hot chocolate and even a special visit from St. Nicholas himself, although with the pandemic and sheltering in place, even St. Nicholas is staying home to make sure that he is healthy enough to continue doing the good things that he does. And so we're just going to gather virtually this year and be able to share in some Christmas cheer, some Advent preparation, and to learn about this great saint who we celebrate on December 6th, which is on this Sunday, this weekend. And so I'm happy to welcome you here into my home and my room in the rectory. This is my Christmas tree here that I put up. I've always put my Christmas tree up the Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. It's something that my dad and my mom and I did when I was a kid, and so I'm happy to continue in that family tradition that we have of getting in the holiday spirit, especially after Thanksgiving ends. We begin, the weekend after, we begin the season of Advent, but it's always great to put the tree up and to see the lights, and it helps us to really, in my mind, get ready for the real Christmas season that begins on Christmas Day, December 26th. I see our Christmas decorations as another way of Advent, of preparing us to welcome the Christ child into our homes. And so while we are going to talk about St. Nicholas today, I also want to talk about some of the symbols and the things that we do see around this time of year, especially in our Christmas decorations that do help us, even in this period of Advent, to wait for and prepare for the coming of Jesus. Now, I'm sure you know, boys and girls, that Advent is, while we are preparing to celebrate Jesus' birthday on December 26th, Advent is also a time for us to prepare for Jesus' second coming. So, he died like humans do. He rose from the dead so that us humans who follow Jesus can also rise from the dead. And then Jesus ascended into heaven 40 days after he rose from the dead. We're getting a little bit into the Easter season. This is all important, right? And now we're waiting for Jesus' second coming. So we know he's going to come again. Now, he comes to us every time that we celebrate the Eucharist at Mass, especially on Sundays, but we celebrate the Eucharist every day of the week. And so Jesus continues to come to us in the Eucharist. Jesus is present to us where two or more are gathered in his name. Jesus has told us that he will be there with them. But Jesus is coming back again from heaven to earth in his whole glorified body on our judgment day, on the last day, right? And so that's what we're preparing for in this season of Advent, for Jesus' second coming. And so while we do wear, fun Christmas sweaters, and we sing these wonderful songs, and we give and receive gifts to people that we love, we also are preparing for the coming of Jesus, right? And we use his birthday as a way for us to prepare for that. And even in our Christmas decorations, we're able to help ourselves prepare for the coming of Jesus. So first, let's look at the Christmas tree, right? Don't you think it's odd that we put a tree up in our house for just this time of year and decorate it with ornaments and such? It is a little odd that this is part of our Christmas tradition. But what is it about the Christmas tree? Why did we start doing this? Well, we don't have to get into the whole history of it right now, but let's look at the actual symbolism that we can gain from our Christmas trees that help us prepare for the second coming of Christ, and also to understand more why Jesus is even born in the first place. So as we look at a Christmas tree, can you think in the scriptures, in the Bible, any particular story or people that had a tree linked very closely to their story? I'll give you a hint. It's in the Old Testament, and it's in the very first book of the Bible. If you guessed the book of Genesis, you would be correct. And it's Adam and Eve, our first parents. This metaphor story that we have that teaches us about original sin. So think back to that story of Adam and Eve. They were in the Garden of, hopefully you knew Eden, the Garden of Eden. And in that garden, God gave them the ability to do pretty much whatever they wanted. They got to name all the animals. They got to eat from many of the trees and the bushes and the fruits and vegetables. The only thing they couldn't do was go to one particular tree, the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and they couldn't eat the fruit from that tree. Now, many people have said or painted that the fruit is an apple. That's really not in the Bible. They made it an apple in a lot of paintings and such, but the apple kind of stuck in people's minds. And it's because Adam and Eve were tempted by Satan, by the devil and the snake, right? Satan took on a snake and tempted them to eat of that tree because Satan used the lie that God is trying to hide something from you. Well, why would our God who is love hide something from us? God just wanted Adam and Eve to freely love him, and to do that means that we listen to the people that we love. And so God asked them to not eat from that tree, but they listened to the evil one instead, and they ate the fruit of the tree. And that's where we have original sin. That was the first sin. Our first parents disobeyed God, and now every other human person that came after them would begin in this original sin. We're no longer made pure and clean and ready for heaven. Now we have this original sin. And so God had to come and wipe away that original sin. And so that's why Jesus is born. God, who always existed, became a human person in Jesus on December 25th, on his birthday. And then Jesus lived his life as a human person, taking on everything it is to be human except sin, right? So God can't sin. He can't go against himself or he wouldn't be God. So Jesus did everything it was to be human, including to suffer and to die, so that then we as humans could then do what he did after he died. He rose from the dead. And so to remind ourselves of why God becomes human in the incarnation, that's a big fancy word that means God became human, incarnation. The whole point of the incarnation was to fix that original sin. And so the Christmas tree is a reminder of that. It's a tree that's meant to represent that tree in the garden. Many ornaments kind of look like fruit. That's not a design choice. It is a choice, but it's meant to mimic the fruit on the tree that we weren't allowed to take, right? That caused that original sin. And so that's what the Christmas tree represents. Did it look like an evergreen tree? Who knows? It doesn't really matter. What matters is that this was what caused, or this was part of our original sin. And so we have it now to remind us why God becomes a human person. And so what are some other symbols that we see around Christmas time? Well, another symbol that's really popular is the Christmas wreath. It's obviously round. You can see that. And anything that's round doesn't have a beginning or an end. So if it's round, that's a symbol of eternity. And so the Christmas wreath is meant to remind us that God is eternal. Now think of your parents and what they wear to remind themselves of their wedding commitment that lasts forever. It's their wedding ring, right? I also wear a ring because I'm married to the church. I'm married to the bride of Christ, the church, right? So I wear a ring myself. And so the ring is, again, it's a symbol of eternity, for eternal love, right? And so Christmas wreath is a reminder to us that God is eternal and his love for us is eternal. And his love for us is so great that we read in the scriptures, God loves us so much that he sent his only son to be born in human flesh, to suffer and to die, so that he could rise from the dead and have all of us rise from the dead with him. All right, so now the last symbol we're going to talk about for Christmas is the candy cane. Now this might be a little bit of a surprise, but the candy cane, what does it kind of look like? Now think of different titles for Jesus. One title that may come up like Lord of Lords, he is the Prince of Peace. Hopefully another title you can think of is the Good Shepherd. And so a candy cane is meant to look like a shepherd's crook, we call it. Not a crook like a robber, a shepherd's crook like what you see. You might see old pictures of like paintings of Jesus as a shepherd, and he's got this staff in his hand. We call it a shepherd's crook. And it looks like the candy cane is meant to look like that. Bishops, who are the shepherds of our dioceses, so Cardinal Cupich and the auxiliary bishops that we have here in Chicago, and bishops all over the world, Pope Francis himself, they have a shepherd. It looks like a shepherd's crook, but we call that a crozier because we like to give many things different names. We can't call anything just one name. So bishops have a crozier that also looks like a shepherd's crook because our bishops are the shepherds of our dioceses. And so that's the candy cane is meant to look like a shepherd to remind us that Jesus, who is born on Christmas Day, is the Good Shepherd. And we are his sheep who follow the Good Shepherd. And then, coincidentally, if you turn the candy cane upside down, it looks like a J for Jesus. So isn't that cool? But now the real reason that we're gathering here today, and as even though it is virtual, is to talk about the saint that we celebrate this weekend, or today if you're watching this on December 6th, the Feast of Saint Nicholas. Now, Saint Nicholas is an awesome saint who did really cool things. And Saint Nicholas then even inspires someone else who lives at the North Pole to go and do his various good works on Christmas Eve night that you're all very familiar with. You may even have some of his helpers in and around your home. But St. Nicholas is a saint of the church that began that whole tradition of gift giving and taking care of others and being very charitable in this time of year. So St. Nicholas was a parish priest who saw a great need in the community that he lived in. So at that time when St. Nicholas was a parish priest, when people would get married, oftentimes the bride's family, so the woman who was being married, oftentimes had to give some money to the groom and his family. This is a very, very ancient tradition. This was for a very long time ago, and it was called a dowry. So we don't do this in our Western American and European cultures. But at this time in the Middle East, where St. Nicholas and many Christians were, this was a common practice, and we called it a dowry. And so the bride and her family would give a certain amount of money to a groom and his family for the wedding to take place. Unfortunately, a lot of poor families who had girls, they weren't able to afford that dowry, which meant that these women would never get married. And unfortunately at that time, women they couldn't work. They were always staying home. And so if they didn't have a husband, then and their parents eventually died, they would kind of be left homeless more often than not, and no one would be there to care for them. And so St. Nicholas took it upon himself to fundraise and raise some money, even gave his own money away to these families so that they could afford the dowry and their girls could marry the loves of their lives and be able to afford it, and then they could live good, healthy lives. And the way that St. Nicholas did this was he would hide the money in bags, and then he would throw the bags of money in the middle of the night, either through an open window or down their chimney, and oftentimes it would land in and around their shoes. And so your parents tonight or last night or whenever you might be watching this, before or after the Feast of St. Nicholas, your parents may have you leave your shoes out so that St. Nicholas can leave you a gift, because he still comes out and does this throughout the world. It's like a little pre-Christmas gift, right? And so in your shoes you might find a gift. It might not be money, but many different cultures have different traditions that St. Nicholas follows, and Some of the more common ones are different fruits, especially like oranges to bring us good health, or peanuts, or sometimes it's candy. Sometimes it might be something else, or there's some money. But it depends on where you live and what St. Nicholas has in his bag as he makes it to your home. So even though he's not with us today, because he's trying to stay socially distant and healthy, I'm sure that if you leave your shoes out and you talk to your parents, then St. Nicholas will come and leave you a little something to celebrate his feast day. But ultimately, St. Nicholas, what he's teaching us is to be generous and kind to other people. St. Nicholas didn't want these young women to grow homeless or to become poor. He wanted them to get married, to be part of families, so they can be taken care of, so they can have children and continue to grow society and to grow the church. And that's what we're called to do, not just in this Advent season, not just in the Christmas season, but every day of our life, to be generous, loving, cheerful, joyful, and to do exactly what Jesus teaches us to do, to love everybody just as much as Jesus and God and the Holy Spirit love us. So I hope that you found our little virtual St. Nicholas gathering helpful. I wish we could do this in person as we normally do, but please know that I'm praying for all of you, for your families. I hope that you have a very happy and blessed Advent season, and certainly a very joyful and Merry Christmas. We'll see you at Mass, either virtually or in person, and I can't wait to see you and your families again, hopefully in person, sooner rather than later. I miss you all and can't wait to celebrate with you. God bless you. Happy Advent. Merry Christmas.